Black 90s Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, James Tunstall. Today's special guest, he's a 15-year veteran of professional wrestling. He's a three-time GNW and also the current GNW World Champion, Mr. Black Dynamite himself. Jeremy Prophet, how you doing?
I am doing fantastic, as good as can be in the year 2020 in the world that we're living in. But I try to start every day with a smile on my face, some warmth in my heart, so I can pass that on to the many people out there that get to interact with me on a daily basis. And yes, I am absolutely stoked to be on here with you. You're one of my favorite podcast people, and hopefully I can, help to get a few more eyes on you and maybe a few more eyes on me in the process.
Hopefully. It's my favourite thing to do, like interview stars from whichever company, brand, and country. It's great because I've watched your matches like on YouTube and in Great North Wrestling, and it's great for me to have the opportunity to speak to you. And it's also great that you say in fact you enjoy my podcast, and hopefully you bring some eyes towards me as well. So it's a great thing to do. Really appreciate it. And we were just talking about it off camera. COVID, it's that dirty word we don't want to talk about, but hopefully 2021 it will make a bit of a difference. How's it been for you these last few months? I know it's pretty bad in Canada.
Yeah, we got it pretty bad here, especially where I'm from in Montreal, Quebec. We're the worst in all of Canada. Right at the start, we got hit pretty hard with it. All of our elder care, old folks' homes, they were hit really hard. I'd say actually over 90% of the deaths from COVID here in Montreal and in Quebec and the entire province were from there. Now it's spread to just about all regions. I've been fortunate, as have my immediate family and friends, to have not contracted it. But still something that we got to be mindful of. We're on a bit of a lockdown here, so all non-essential services gone out the window. All bars, restaurants, gyms have all been restricted, if not closed. So it's been pretty difficult. And when it comes to wrestling, for me, it's been very eye-opening, because one of the things not a lot of people might know about me is that, despite the fact that I say it in almost every interview, is that I've been doing this for 15 years, but I've been doing this for 15 years nonstop. So I've never gotten injured. I've never had to take a break, burn out. Look, I'd rather be doing wrestling than doing anything else in life. So I've been going strong. I've never had more than 3 consecutive weeks off, and that's just in a calendar year when Christmas and New Year's kind of line up. So promoters probably don't want to put on shows during that time with respect to the holidays, but I have been nonstop. Sometimes I've done 30 days consecutively on tours like I did with Grand Prix Wrestling. And sometimes, for most of that tour, performed at least 2 times a night. They had me under a hood, had me, actually showing off my beautiful face the other half of the time, sometimes doing triple duty. And if you guys don't believe me, well, you can talk to Rene Dupree. He can verify all of that. And anyone else that was on the tour can also tell you, I'm balls to the walls. Every time I'm in there, I want to be in the ring, not phoning it in, giving 110%. And so to now be in 2020, where I've had 3 matches over the course of the last, I'd say, 6 or 7 months. So that's been very different. I've never had that kind of downtime. And it's given me time to sit back, reflect, and it's given me the opportunity to actually assess my position and standing in the world of wrestling. So some people content themselves to just, in existence in professional wrestling, but I have very strong ambitions. I feel that I'm amongst the best in the world, that I am a main event level talent, someone who always gives the people their money's worth. I just haven't been provided with a big enough stage and a big enough spotlight to showcase that. But don't think out there just because you haven't heard of me that, I'm some jabroni on the independent scene. No, I'm first class. I carry myself like that. I do everything on a day-to-day basis that a professional should do. I live that lifestyle because I know that eventually my time is coming. I'm like a recording artist who's been doing this for a while, following the hustle and grind, but hasn't been signed to a major label as of yet. But you know what? Jay-Z was someone like that who wasn't signed to a major label, and he managed to make it and pass everybody. So I'm here looking for that opportunity, but if not, I'm going to blaze the trail myself if I have to.
Yeah, it's very well spoken. it's one of them. It's getting like, I know you're talented. I've watched your matches, and we'll go through it like during this interview, like some of the great stars and legends and Hall of Famers you've wrestled, and it's getting that opportunity. And I mean, for example, say for example, someone like Johnny Swinger, like he was known for wrestling 2 or 3 years in ECW, and he's been working independence, and that was like towards the end of the 90s, beginning 2000s, and then for the next 15, 16, 17 years, you've never really seen much of him. But now he's found his way in Impact Wrestling and he's on TV every week. And it's getting that right opportunity at the right time to get that chance, basically. And I mean, once we go through this interview, like, I do believe you will eventually get to that point, because I've interviewed other independent wrestlers. Amber Nova, like this girl who resides in Florida, she's had like the odd tryout match in WWE and NXT and Impact Wrestling, and I believe she's eventually going to get a chance again. And with so many companies out there, I reckon there will be more opportunities. But one of the main things to get over first is COVID, because that's putting a stop to allowing all these guys and women to have these tryouts. But hopefully, once COVID passes, then you'll get your opportunities quite sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping for that. It's interesting that you bring up someone like Johnny Swinger, because I do have a bit of a connection to him in that he was trained by Ron Hutchison. Ron Hutchison, who has also trained many wrestlers of note, Edge and Christian, Trish Stratus, Gail Kim. I could go on and on. He's actually one of my main mentors in the wrestling business. We talk just about every month at least. He actually does a better job of keeping in touch with me than I do with him. But we have a very strong bond, a good friendship. In fact, he came out of his long hiatus in wrestling.
That's right.
Specifically to work with me. In fact, you can see that match online of Jeremy Prophet versus the Masked Thunderbolt from Grand Prix Wrestling, which was Ron Hutchison's first match in 20-something, some odd years. And so, I felt honored and privileged that he would choose me as his opponent. He worked with a few other people on that tour, and on the last couple of days that he was there, he said, I'm not working unless I can work with Jeremy again. And we ran that match several nights, and I learned a lot, but I learn a lot from everybody. I'm like a sponge. I pick and choose from a lot of people. I don't marry myself to one style. One of the things I'm most proud of is that if you watch any Jeremy Prophet match, you don't see a lot of repetition. You don't see the same match. I'm not someone who just has a set of maneuvers that I do in different orders. No, I have a vast repertoire of what I bring to the match. And, my formula is that I can work with anybody. I've worked with giants and monsters. I've worked with cruiserweight, fast-paced people. I'm a middle-sized guy myself, standing 5'11" on a good day, weighing a nice, sleek 215 pounds of prime sexual real estate, if I do say so myself. So it opens the door to having to work with half the people that are bigger than me, half the people that are smaller than me. So I kind of have to be a jack of all trades, but I do feel that I've mastered a number of them. And there's always that intriguing factor of, what are we going to see tonight? And so with me, I call myself the man of a million moves, but I kind of like to be that moldable X factor that can add to my opponent and maybe bring out something a little bit different, complete what is missing from the match. Not to go into, talking about me, but this is an interview with me. So I'll take the liberty of doing that and call myself out on it in the process because I'm an honest guy. But, I'll look at what my opponents can do and I'll say, okay, they can do these things. So that means the people won't see this. So if I'm wrestling like a speedball Mike Bailey, one of my best opponents, one of my best friends outside the ring, great high flyer, very agile, great striker, maybe I'll bring the power game. Maybe I'll bring more of the entertainment. If I'm wrestling someone who's more of a showman, not so much of a wrestler, then I'll bring more of the wrestling. I'll bring more of the agility. But one thing is for certain is when I'm in there, you're going to get intensity and violence. Because I pride myself on the fact that you're not going to look at me in a ring and think you can handle me. If you think you can stand in front of my path of rage, I invite you to do that because I'm a dangerous individual. And that comes from, maybe where I came from. It comes from a lot of the other things I faced. I feel I have a chip on my shoulder the size of this entire country. So ain't nobody going to stand across the ring from me and think they can handle me. I may win, I may lose, but I'll take a huge chunk out of you in the process, regardless.
Awesome. And speaking of where you came from, I suppose we'll start things off from the beginning. So your childhood. So being a Canadian, I suppose the two choices is ice hockey and wrestling. So was you? I presume you was a wrestling fan at a very young age.
Oh yeah. When I was around 6 or 7 years old, I saw the first match, wrestling match ever, which for me was Bret Hart versus Blake Beverly. I always tell the story. Saw it, got hooked on it, became a fan. As I've said many times, maybe if the first match I saw was, I don't know, Doink the Clown and TL Hopper, I wouldn't have been as big of a fan. But I saw Bret and took a liking to him immediately. Didn't know he was Canadian. At that time, you don't know that really means anything in the world, that there's this person that's successful that's come from the same country as you. I'm not a nationalistic person, if you could believe that, despite the flag behind me, flag on the belt as well. But I'm proud of where I came from. And I think that, whenever Canada wins, I'm happy, no matter what the sport. We're kind of like an underdog here in North America, because at the end of the day, we are all Americans over on this side. It's not just because you're part of the United States portion that you're not an American. We're all in North America, from Mexico all the way up to the Yukon, Alaska, and beyond. We are all Americans here. So, when it comes down to it, we are a bit of an underdog because we're Canada, and it's good when we win and we can compete on that same stage and take a couple wins. But you mentioned hockey, and I am an absolute huge hockey fan. I myself have played for 15 years, loved hockey. I was a hockey player before I was a wrestler. In fact, I played baseball as well. Not a lot of people know that. My humble estimation of myself as a baseball player is that I was extremely talented, offered opportunities to go into programs where I would pretty much do baseball 7 days a week, but I didn't love the game of baseball. Taking away the fact that I was extremely talented, and that's why I kept doing it. All-star teams, high levels, actually got scouting, which I've not received in many other of my ventures. I do feel if I had the same passion for baseball that I do for wrestling, I'd be someone who'd be on the verge of getting a Hall of Fame ring at this point. But baseball was not the same. That's my humble estimation. I was really freaking good at baseball. I was a decent hockey player, but there was a lot of politics involved in hockey. Hockey was kind of more like wrestling, but hockey was a sport that I chose to play. Baseball was something that my parents just decided to put me in, and I happened to be good at it. Along the way, I also dabbled in track and field. I also I did fencing for a year, boxing. I never competed in boxing, but did the training. In fact, I did that later on the recommendation of one of your countrymen, William Regal, who actually said it would help my footwork. And so that's what made me go and train in boxing. Now, I never fought, but I did the training religiously based on that critique, and I think that it actually helped improve my wrestling quite a bit. In terms of other sporting endeavors, I think that about sums it up, but eventually I'd find my way to wrestling, which was my one true love, and that was straight out of high school. Had a friend whose younger brother was training with Jacques Rougeau, and then I decided to give it a shot. They told me I was a natural. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I stuck it out, and to this day, I'm the only one from my initial training class that's still going in the business. And 15 years, no injuries, knock on wood. I think it's been a hell of a career, win, lose, or draw.
Cool. And you mentioned Jacques Rougeau, the Mountie he's well known as. What was it like training underneath him? I've heard that he's got a kind of a love him or hate him kind of personality, but every interview I seem to see of him, he seems like pretty fine with me. But what was it like training with him?
He was great to me. I have no issues with him. I know a lot of people take issue with the fact that at the time he would discourage and limit the talent from being able to go and perform for other promotions. A lot of people had a lot of animosity with him because of that. With me, he was fine. He always treated me great. He taught me a lot. But I guess in a lot of ways, like I didn't see Jacques as someone negative or someone who was trying to hold me back like a lot of these other guys. I really felt he just wanted the best for his promotion. And to a certain extent, him telling people not to go to other promotions was protecting his business. That's all he was doing. Yeah. He's a businessman. And so there's an age-old expression of, you teach someone, you catch a fish, you can feed a man for a day, but you teach him how to fish, he'll never go hungry again. So, maybe he wasn't teaching people to be fishermen, but he was teaching us enough that, we could put the rest together ourselves if we so decided to leave the nest. There's an actually more cruder expression where they say, if a hoe asks a pimp for, clothes or makeup or anything, it's fine. As soon as she asks for money, no, that you gotta draw the line. So, I don't advocate prostitution nor solicitation, but nonetheless, it's an accurate example of that. So yeah, no animosity for Jacques. In fact, I hope I could do an interview with him one day. I think that'd be pretty cool. If he even remembers who I am, but he's liked a few of my photos and videos online, so I think he's probably smart to who I am. And yeah, no ill will from me towards old Jacques.
Yeah, I would love to speak to him myself, Jeremy. Like growing up, like in the 90s, I was raised up on like the Hulkamania years and like the new generation. And obviously, I spoke to PCO the other day, which we'll talk about him in a bit. But the Mountie, he was just that. I just actually reviewed SummerSlam 91, where he got locked up in prison for the night. And for me, he stole the show that night. So love to have him on. But when you in your early days, one of your tag partners I noticed in CWA was Kevin Steen, which people now know him as Kevin Owens. And like I've seen you do interviews with him, but like during the early days, tagging with him, what was he like in the early days?
Well, just so things don't get misconstrued, Kevin and I teamed, if I'm not mistaken, once. I've only been in the ring with Kevin 3 times, which I think is a damn shame because I think that we could have done a lot of good business together. I always say it. There's also a misconception that because we were both trained by Jacques Rougeau, that we trained together. And that's not true. Right. There was only 2 weeks of overlap in the time that Kevin left Jacques and I arrived. So I saw him train there maybe once. I might have shook his hand, but that's about it. So there's no memory from there. And then, yeah, we teamed. Great match, in fact. It was Kevin and I against Sexy Eddie and Stevie McFly, which those who know who Stevie McFly is know that that's Sami Zayn. So definitely a lot of talent in the ring together. It's actually the only time I worked with Rami. But yeah, a lot of talent in the ring together. Had a good time teaming with Kevin. Good guy in the ring, out of the ring. We would have some friction years later, but I think that we worked through that. I know it's a very popular clip on YouTube, me shooting on Kevin. But look, we had that interaction. What was said was said. We didn't come to blows. We could have came to blows, but we didn't come to blows. And that's pretty much all there is to that. The last memory I have of Kevin. We also did a triple threat match with me, him, and Steve Carino. That took place. Right, yeah. And then we were in a multi-team ladder match where I teamed with Sexy Eddie against Kevin and XS and another team by the name of Latino Connection. We had that match. That's where the friction actually started. Was just some stuff backstage, wrestling related, business related. Nothing personal. Kevin took exception to it. And then, like I said, a month later, we had words, just he and I, man to man. And, that was squashed. And the last time I saw him was at a show for a company called CRW here, just after he had done his tryouts for WWE. And I had seen Jimmy Jacobs, who is a person I think the world of. I think he's one of the most brilliant people in wrestling. And I've said it many times, one of my favorite people in wrestling. Feel very privileged to have spent time around him and to have been in the ring with him as well. And Jimmy was telling me how, Kevin, we just got to talking about Kevin and about Rami. And, I had friction with those guys at the time. And, he was telling me a bit about them and Ring of Honor and, what they're like over there. And he had said that he and Kevin had been talking, and Kevin did the tryout, but he was a little nervous they might judge him on his weight or just, judge him in general. And then he said, he had told Kevin, I think that, they already knew what you were. So they were just bringing you in to look at other aspects, maybe, see if they could break you and then the tryouts or however their tryouts go. So then when I saw Kevin, I think it might have even been a couple of days after that, might have been a day or two after that. I said to him, hey, good luck. And, I think there's a good chance they're going to hire you. So I kind of felt like Kevin and we had ended on a positive note. He is someone that I have respect for because, he blazed his own trail. And, at the end of the day, he's a talented wrestler. So, I look at it as it was a missed opportunity that we didn't get to go in there. And, I'm a hungry young lion. It's like if you're on top, I'm looking to go for the jugular, which in our business behind the scenes means I'm looking to go in there and work with you and, give you a run for your money, but, to the benefit of the fans and to the company. Let's go in there and let's do some good business. Let's work. So, that was how I ended it with Kevin. And then I feel he made some comments online at some point. I don't think that he even watched the video and what I said about him. And so there's that. But it's not something I'm going to lose sleep over because Kevin, he does his thing. And, as long as he's not stopping me in any way, then that's fine with me. He's got a family to support. He's got, responsibilities that I don't have. I don't have a kid. I don't have kids. I don't have a wife or anything like that. So, I get it. I get why he's doing what he's doing. And that's his grind. That's not getting in my way. So, with Kevin, a lot of people think, these guys don't like each other. Nah, power to him with what he's doing. And as long as he's, not getting in my way, I don't see a reason to get in his or drag his name through the mud when he's just trying to make a living and provide for his family.
Awesome. And you mentioned Jimmy Jacobs. I had the pleasure of interviewing him a few months ago, and absolute gentleman, great guy, and gave me more than enough time to speak to him. And really great guy. And another person you also mentioned, Sexy Eddie, and in SWR, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was your first title, the International Championship. So what was it like being awarded a championship for the first time? How did that feel like?
You did your homework more than anyone that has ever interviewed me. So I'll give you that accolade. I'm good. I'm not just blowing smoke at you, Sir James. I tell you that's one SWR that really surprises me that you brought up. It technically was not my first championship, but it was my first championship as Jeremy Prophet.
Then that's right.
Because I also won the Lutte Internationale Championship when I was wrestling as Spider-Man. So that would have been my first championship, which I won, if I'm not mistaken, in my fourth wrestling match of my career. But that was my first championship as Jeremy Prophet. It was a good feeling. It was a very quick match, and Eddie is one of my greatest rivals in wrestling. He's one of my dearest friends outside of wrestling. In fact, in the early stages of my career, when Eddie was already catching on and doing CZW and going to the States, which was a big deal for us here in Canada, he was always a gentleman to me. And then years later, I'm on the road traveling with him. Lots of fun times, lots of great stories, and working with him. I've done easily, I'd say, over 30 matches with Eddie, a lot of which, people have never seen. And it was always fun working with him. Never a dull moment, never a bad match, unless we had an off day. But, we had a lot of good days at the office, he and I.
Cool. And I was going through your history, and one of the first, I suppose, big legends you fought was Brutus Beefcake. So obviously, you grew up in the 90s yourself, and I would imagine you watched him on TV. So what was it like wrestling Brutus, and what was it like backstage?
Yeah, Brutus was all right. One of the things I always remember about Brutus is not necessarily that night that we wrestled, because it was a very quick match.
That's right.
The show had a fairly poor attendance, and it's understandable that somebody maybe doesn't want to go out and risk injury or do a lot when one, they're at the age that he's at, and also that there's not a lot of people in attendance. So if you're looking for a match that was a 5-star classic, it wouldn't be that match between he and I. But what I do appreciate of Mr. Leslie was, I'd say a good 2 years after that, I was performing on a show in Maine, and I saw him there, and didn't want to get in his way. He's doing his thing, working the merch table and whatnot. He saw me backstage, and he came up to me and said,
cool.
"Hey, we're a long way from Montreal." I'm like, "Oh wow." We had this little 3-minute match on a little show, and he still remembers me. And it would be something that I'd come to see in wrestling, that I seem to have this impact on people. Maybe I just have one of those faces. Maybe you just don't see a lot of people that look like me. but a lot of people remember me. And that's always touching, because I like to feel as though if you see me perform, I don't go unnoticed. You have to take notice of me. And I think that is the quality of a star in wrestling, is you have to notice a person. I see tons of people, they can go out and wrestle for 20, 30 minutes, and people are on their phones texting and talking to the person beside them. I make sure that I gobble up every bit of spotlight that's thrown my way to make sure that, you are going to remember me. Even if it's just, you go home and you're saying that show you went to, you didn't feel you get your money's worth, but that one guy, with the black and red coat, with the dreads, with the whatever it may be, it could be a move that I did that will be memorable.
Cool. And from one Hall of Famer to another Hall of Famer, and you've told this story many times, but for the benefit of my listeners, your experience with Coco Beware, quite a funny story. So please, the floor is yours.
Well, I'll try not to take up too much time talking about it. I've mellowed out in my old age here. That what happened with Coco, it was maybe just a perfect storm of a lot of things going wrong. Again, I don't know how much detail I went into, but I was thrilled with the idea of facing Coco. I remember him from teaming with Owen Hart and the Birdman, all that. The match, I do believe, is still available. My favorite part was not just the match, but the pre-match promo. I enjoyed that because I remember I lambasted him with insults. I think I said, like, half the people here think that you're Sir Mo from Men on a Mission. You didn't even bring your bird with you. And then he responded to me. And then I responded, if I'm not mistaken, I said, like, because they couldn't understand him with his accent and the mic wasn't that good. And he insisted on yelling into it. And I just said, look at this guy over here. Not only do people not know who this guy is nor care, but he can't even string two words together in proper English. And just really was, ripping on him. Not out of animosity, just out of, you're going to get on a microphone with me. Look, you gotta be able to go. I think it's sink or swim if you're going to get on the mic with me. And then I remember he called me a wannabe Chris Jericho, which I take as a compliment, because Chris Jericho is one of my inspirations. I had the chance to, in fact, my first interview I ever conducted, which I am a journalist. That's my education. Was with Chris Jericho for one of his Fozzy concerts. And I had the opportunity to actually go backstage and meet him. I have a great picture, which I can maybe get to you. You can maybe splice it in as I'm talking about this if you want. But I met Chris Jericho, a young me, maybe around 18 or so. He gave me some great advice, said that, wrestling will be the hardest thing you ever do. But, if you keep working at it, you never give up, you can make it. And that always stuck with me, always got me through the hard times. Seeing that someone like Chris Jericho, who's a guy, roughly my height, my size, could have this extravagant career, no matter what kind of hardships came his way, like in WCW where, he was getting buried, but, giving him that 1 minute of mic time per night, he managed to make himself into one of the biggest stars, which I feel you give me that same opportunity and I'll make you money with that. So Chris Jericho, being called a wannabe Chris Jericho, that's not an insult for me. That's the best you're going to bring there. Coco Beware with I think he had a stuffed bird with him that night too. Because, I guess that's where his career is at, and he can't afford the real one no more. All that to say, I remember before the match, Abdullah the Butcher was there, and cool. Abdullah was very insistent that Coco not go over. And he was just insistent, talking to the promoter and talking mad trash about Coco. And he's like, you're Canadian, you're from here. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody cares who he is. You should be the one going over. And I was, I'm just there to do good business. I'm happy to, get the chance to work with someone who's been in the business that long. And as we're going over the match, I start telling him some of what I'd like to do. I'm explaining him some kicks that I do, stuff that is 100% safe. You could have a newborn infant take the same stuff that I was offering to give him and be unharmed. And he was like, whoa, calm down, brother. You work with me. You don't feel me. I'm like, what? Well, you're not going to feel me either. Just have a little faith there, my dude. All that to say, I planned a moonsault spot where I would do the moonsault and he would just have to roll out of the way. And I belly out on it perfectly fine. We're also in a boxing ring, by the way. So
right.
if you see that match, yeah, we're in a boxing ring, stiffest ring I've ever been in, but I'm insistent on I'm going to go out there and I'm going to give these people a show, even if it's going to hurt me. I mean, I had no fear. I still have no fear. When we did that moonsault, for some God-blessed reason, he just did not move. And I connected with that. The ref counted 3. He kicked out at 3.5. We kind of let it slide. And then, we went into the finish that he had wanted to do. Everyone loved the fact that I did a moonsault because there was the only athletic thing. I mean, there was a main event match between Sid Vicious and Hacksaw Jim Duggan where they didn't even so much as want to take a knee in the ring. But also, I going back and watching that match, I'm like, man, I really I bumped him a lot. I made him take bumps. I clotheslined him and I put him down. I was a raging bull in there. So I kind of feel a little bit bad about that because, now I'm like, I could have maybe worked around that. But there was a lot of friction. And I remember that when I asked the promoter, what was the discussion like when, initially I was supposed to go over and, now he's going over. He said to me, man, I'm a Hall of Famer. I'm a Hall of Famer. I can't be going around the indies losing to these guys, these nobodies. So, that's my experience with Kokobi, where people think it's a funny story. Maybe it is. I don't know. It's a learning experience, no matter how you look at it.
Cool. And the next guy, Lanny Poffo. So there's 2 things I want to talk about. So the first one I want to talk about. So I remember watching this clip about 10 years ago, if that. And it's the clip where I think him and Hannibal's just had a match. And Hannibal's in the dressing room. You're talking to Honky Tonk Man. Poffo is walking by and he slaps Hannibal in the face, and you and Honky breaks up. I don't know if it's a shoot or if it's a wet. Can you clearly finally give us the answer? What was it?
It was a situation where Lanny had gotten upset, but not for the reasons you'd think. So what had happened was, if I'm not mistaken, Hannibal had wanted to do a shoot type of situation with Lanny. So he told him, we are going to have cameras rolling and we're going to do this kind of thing backstage. What he did not anticipate, now here's both sides. What Lanny did not anticipate was what wrestling Hannibal is like, because he's very physical. He's very strong. There are a lot of people who don't want to wrestle him. I've wrestled him maybe 12 to 15 times. I don't mind because I like a good fight. I like taking guys who people are afraid of. And then, this medium-sized guy goes in there and is, just as much of a pit bull. Again, I go for the jugular. I actually should probably, go for the genitals first, because that's the easier path to winning a fight. But, let's just say I go for the jugular. Wrestling Hannibal, it's a chore. It's a fight every time. And he brought that fight to Lanny, chopped him quite a bit, tore his shirt off. And this upset Lanny because his luggage got lost. So he had no other clothes. And now he had his shirt torn. He's wrestling this guy who's chopping him, who's blowing him up in there. And he's genuinely getting frustrated. So when it comes time that we're going to now have this flow into this angle and everything, he just let him have it. And I mean, I could see it in his eyes as he walked in, that like something, I know he's not that good of an actor. And he just let him have it. And, it was a little stiff. And then Hannibal took him down, and then he's getting into it. And I'm thinking, okay, they're putting on a show. And then I see the torque he's putting on the hold. And I'm like, okay, I like Lanny. I don't want to see something bad happen here. And then we break it up. And then after there was a little bit more words that were exchanged and whatnot, Honky was also a little off put. He was maybe thinking about flying out and not doing the show the next day because they were in a tag match against Hannibal. And at the end of it all, cooler heads prevailed. But all that to say, it was like a work that became a shoot due to unforeseen circumstances. But at the end of the day, everyone was professionals. I've been a part of a lot of those things with Hannibal. I always like to point to the Terry Funk press conference, which I think was a masterpiece. If people haven't seen that, you're missing out on an absolute masterpiece, better than anything that's been showcased on WWE television in terms of the violence, the realism, the hilarity, which I was right there seeing the whole thing. I thought it was hilarious, but it was also intense and violent. And that's the main thing. You got to give people violence in wrestling.
True. And the thing is, today's fans, like the best word for them, and Daniel Bryan said it best, they're fickle. They complain that, for example, WWE are too childish. So when they start doing some more adult storylines, rather like the Fiend being set on fire and things like that, they complain, "Oh, this is too far." And I'm like, you can never fucking win. And like I grew up like New Generation, then Attitude Era, ECW, Monday Nitro. So, and I want that, but I can appreciate like they need to cater to the kids, but it's not so much WWE that bothers me, it's the fans because they keep complaining about one thing, then they want another thing, so they can never make their mind up. But then
You need to have, I'd say you need to have a certain level of thick skin because let's face it, they're on Monday nights, prime time. You're up against a lot of adult content. So you can't be putting on a kid's show. It blows my mind that, sometimes common sense is just right there in front of people and they choose to totally ignore it. So you're on in prime time. You're competing for ratings against shows that are R-rated, mature, all of these things, yet you're offering up a kid's show. You could take the best kids show, put it in prime time. It will get demolished. Exactly. It's just common sense. We live in a world where, sometimes education and these things are more valued than actual common sense, which is why there are a lot of A+ students working for C+ students. So, the way I see it is, people will complain, but at the same time, you'll also gain a bigger audience. You'll make more money. So for me, even as a wrestler, there are people who don't like me. That's fine. I'll be happy if there's 1 million people in the world that don't like me, if there's going to be 10 billion people that do. And I can't take full credit for that quote. That comes from R. Kelly. Love him or hate him, it's a hell of a quote.
Cool. And also, we've got a saying over here, common sense ain't very common. So that's what I'm saying.
And I assume I'm gonna actually just take a lead here with you. I assume that you said 2 stories about Lanny Poffo. You probably want to ask me about our infamous car ride, which I was recently told by Hannibal that clip got taken down. I don't know why. But let me preface this by saying that Lanny Poffo, he's an interesting one to me, and I'm going to keep saying this in interviews because Lanny is on the short list of people that I like that don't like me. And he could say anything, pretty much anything about me. I'll still like Lanny Poffo. I had a lot of fun wrestling him. I had a lot of fun traveling with him. Still don't really know what caused the rift, but that's fine. Lanny, you don't want to like me? That's cool. I'm always going to like you, even if you don't like me. So I will talk about that story since there's clearly an audience for it. And it was simple.
I don't know why, but there is.
And I said to Hannibal the last time this came up when I did his TV show, I said, how come no one asked Missy Hyatt about it? She's the one that wrote it in her book. She's a much more credible source than me. I was just a guy who was in a car and he told this story to you. You can't really verify it, but I mean, I'm also not someone that lies or embellishes the truth here. So we were in the car and, he starts telling me about Missy's book where she said there were these guys, I was asked who has the biggest penis in wrestling. And I said it would either be Virgil, Lanny Poffo, or I don't know, Too Cold Scorpio. It might have been something like that. Or Fuller, Colonel Parker Fuller.
Yeah.
And so with Lanny, he starts telling me about this and saying, oh, there are rumors about me. Have you ever heard any? And I'm playing innocent. I mean, that's the only rumor I really know about him. But, I'm not going to go and just say that. Maybe me today would say that. But, I just was going to, play innocent and see where it goes. And then he says, like, Missy Hyatt wrote this in her book. And I don't think much of it. And then afterward, it's just kind of like, hey, rumors are rumors. And he's like, rumors are rumors. There's a bit of a silence. I can continue driving. And then he says, but for the record, he says, sorry, take that back. He says, people come up to me and they ask me, hey, is it true that you can do the whole autofellatio is what it's called? And he says, I'll tell them, well, can you? And then they'll say, well, no. And then he says, well, that shows that you've tried. I haven't tried, so I don't know. That just shows how sick you are. So that's where there's the awkward silence.
Yeah.
And then he says, but for the record, I can. And it's like, oh, okay. And then he says, and I don't know if it's a case of I'm just that nimble or it's just that big, but I can. And it's like, okay. So you can. And I guess somewhere along the lines, he got mad because I said that I don't know, but Lanny was something of a good mentor to me. I enjoyed our matches. Hannibal enjoyed our matches too. He enjoyed that I would chop Lanny and he would get genuinely upset. But no, I mean, Lanny was he was an innovator. He, was one of the first to do a lot of these high risk maneuvers, springboards, moonsaults. I have a tremendous respect for him for that, and he was very underrated on the microphone as well. Definitely could spit a good rhyme. He probably could have had a great career as a mumble rapper in today's day and age. You never know.
Go. And one of the guys you wrestled with as well, and I don't know what your dealings was like with him, but Scott Steiner, one of the all-time greats. So some people say he's a little bit crazy behind the scenes, but a lot of people say he's a nice guy. Depends what side of him, I guess, you're on. So what was like wrestling Scott, and then how was your relationship with him?
Yeah, well, I had the privilege of having about 3 matches with Scott Steiner over the course of 2 years, and he was never difficult. He was a total professional, a real man's man, and it was so simple working with him. By the time we did our second match, he was saying to me, you can just go in there and call it to me. That's fine. I called a lot of the second match to him. The third match that we did, and obviously we've now had 2 years of build-up between these matches. The third one, he says to me, what are your thoughts? What are your ideas? And I said, you're the main attraction here. You're a former WCW world champion. Far be it for me to impose and want to suggest anything. Yeah. Let's go with whatever you want to do. They're paying to see you more than they're paying to see me. And he said, no, I want your input because in all our other matches, you've brought good ideas. So I want to hear your ideas. Tell me, don't let any of that, what I've accomplished and stuff, affect you. Bring your ideas to the table. And that to me was the ultimate honor. And I even remember when I had done I had gone to a few TNA events just to try to, show face, get my foot in the door, that kind of thing. I really, really wanted to work with them back in 2011. Just really wanted to be a part of that company. I loved where they were going. I enjoyed watching their show. And he would see me back there and, he'd come up to me, hug me, he put in a word with whoever was, the agent back there, D'Lo Brown or Jeff Jarrett, and it was a good feeling to know that someone like Scott Steiner had my back. There have been a lot of people in wrestling who've had my back. You see, people don't know. Again, they're probably sitting there thinking, okay, here's, typical indie guy who, wrestles in shorts and kick pads, whatever it may be. And it's like, no, I'm just a professional who kind of just got overlooked. I'm living proof of the lack of scouting there is here in Canada, because realistically, if more people knew me, I would be on a bigger stage. But Scott Steiner is definitely someone that had my back there, but as did a lot of people, as did Matt.
Yeah, audio's just went a little bit.
Like I said, as did Matt Morgan, as did Elijah Burke, who I teamed with. And
that's right.
He saw me as someone who I was just there at one of the first TNA events that I went to, and just hanging out in the backstage because Terry Taylor had okayed it, and he invited me into the locker room. Pope spoke up for me, and then later on we ended up winning tag titles together on Independent. Right. Ken Anderson, who I had worked on some shows with, also there was a good contingent of talent there. Even like Orlando Jordan, who gave me great advice, and we used to talk and whatnot. There were a lot of key people there in TNA that at the time, I really thought I was going to get a job there. Jeff Jarrett thought very highly of me at the TNA gut check that I did, as did D'Lo Brown. Just timing is everything. And I guess it was during the transition of Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan arriving into the company. But I really felt like I made a good enough impression on them, both with my speaking ability, my appearance, and my in-ring ability, that they saw something marketable there. I was just a victim of not wanting to be, I kind of saw it as brown nosing. I kind of saw it as, I'm not going to ask for a handout. I'm not going to ask for a favor. But, I later realized that, maybe it wouldn't have hurt staying on top of these guys, talking with them, that thing. I just didn't want to be seen. I wanted to be seen as someone who can work. And I don't mean work in the sense of what you do in a ring, but just can put in work, and that it will pay off. I don't want to be seen as somebody who is one of the many, not victims, but one of the many cases of nepotism, of favoritism, of all these things that have polluted and poisoned the wrestling business. I don't want to be someone's boy, and that's what gets my foot in the door. I want it to be, my talent and ability. Lo and behold, years later, you come to realize that no one gets it done themselves. It takes someone to open the door. And, as much as I like to say I'm a self-made man, I am a self-made man, but, no one makes it to the top on their own.
No. And you mentioned Elijah Burke. I had the pleasure of speaking to him a few months ago. Really great guy, and he does great work with charities. And I noticed that you won the tag belts together. So that was great. But in 2000, I think I got this right, 2010, 2011, I think it was 2010, you done your WWE tryouts. And you had a match with Kurt Hawkins and Vance Archer, but what was it like being at the tryouts? I know you tried out with quite a few guys there, so what was the process like?
Well, my story with WWE goes back to December of 2009, where I got invited to FCW at the time to try out. So I had initially gotten refused. I sent my information and everything. I got refused. But then I guess some powers that be maybe reassess things. I know that I had Mike Bucci, Simon Dean, Nova pulling for me a lot. And he was someone who just saw me, was just taken aback and said, have you ever tried it with WWE? And I was like, no, but that was my dream at the time. And he said, send me your information. I will get it to them. And that's why I also mentioned how, it's so important for us to have scouting and visibility here, because I feel like I'm a diamond in the rough. And moments like that validate that to me, that, he saw me, didn't know if I could work, didn't know if I could say 2 words properly, didn't know if I could run the ropes properly, and already was saying, you look like you have potential to be on a bigger stage, to be good for this business. I did that, sent him the information. I believe from what Sylvain Grenier, who I had been working at his wrestling school at the time, said, Pat Patterson may have also put in a word and whatnot. And my application was then accepted. So then I went to Florida, did a week-long tryout, did 3 matches while I was there, the third of which was on the last day and was the actual last match of the camp, which was with Jinder Mahal. They ended up signing Jinder Mahal. And I think it's because of the match that we did, because I had already wrestled Jinder on the indies before that. So we were familiar with one another. In fact, wrestled him, got along with him, kept in touch with him. Like we were really, we were really close. And we did that match. Fantastic match. I did the 450 at the end on him. He put a hell of a heat on me. It was great. And he was the only one given a contract. And they all told me good things. They all told me, you have a future here. You did everything right. I've often said that if I could do that tryout over, even today with everything I've learned, I would not have been able to do it as well as I did there. Everything, all the stars aligned. I could not repeat that and do as well. Every drill, every hurdle, everything was through the roof. It was an amazing tryout. Then comes 2010 with the Raw and SmackDown, where I would get the match on SmackDown against Kurt Hawkins and Lance Archer. That came about as just, me calling the office, trying to get booked as an extra. Eventually they gave in. They'd tell me call back in 2 weeks. I'd call back in 2 weeks. They tell me call back another 2 weeks. I call back another 2 weeks. They tell me all the spots are full. I said, well, you told me to call back the past 2 weeks, past month, what gives? And they gave me a spot. I got there and I said, look, I'm not here to just exist. Maybe, and people will say like, oh, I'm arrogant or whatnot, but it's like, no, it's like I carry myself in a certain way where I know my value. And I'm not going to walk around with my head down, like I'm not someone who's accomplished things in the world, because there's wrestling in the wrestling world. Then there's the real world. So I, go around, I'll shake hands, I'll talk to people, I'll do things like that. I cornered John Laurinaitis and he wanted to write me off and I didn't let him. I just said, I stood my ground and I said, no, I want to work here. And, that was me selling myself to him, saying like, look, you are not going to break me the same way that, working 7 days a week on the road away from family, all that stuff is not going to break me. I'm not here to be anything less than successful. This is it for me. These other extras here, they want to stand around and laugh and talk about Hulk Hogan and all those things. I'm not one of those guys who's just happy to be here. And I think that that's a big issue in wrestling, is that too many people are just happy to get signed to that contract and then they lose their ambition. They lose that ruthlessness. They lose that chip on their shoulder. And that's why I think with me, a guy who's been on the sidelines for so long, I can make a huge impact throughout wrestling because of that anger, because of I've been overlooked for this long. Now I want to make people realize that, this was wrong. This was a big mistake once I get that platform, which I know is on its way. So all that to say, I've taken the steps every time to get noticed. And when I'm talking to John Laurinaitis, he mentions, well, if you're so good, why haven't I heard of you? And I said, that surprises me because your staff in FCW gave me, I passed with flying colors. They gave me a tremendous review. They literally sent it to me in writing. If I could dig it up, I'd be happy to scan it and put it out there because they said 99% positive things about me on there.
Yeah.
With that said, he said, okay, fine. Well, I'll contact them. And if you're lying to me, I'm going to kick you out of here. His exact words were, you're never going to hear from me, and I never want to hear from you. And I said, do you think I'm standing here lying to you? I mean, maybe you get guys in every town that come up to you and they're going to BS with you. But when it comes down to it, why would I stand here and lie to you? In fact, why would I be here getting a tryout if I wasn't good? But that was my mentality, not knowing that just about anyone can be an extra. But to me, it really was, you have to be good to be here. And to the credit, the wrestlers I was there trying out with, they were good wrestlers. Sami Zayn was one of them. Rami was one of the wrestlers there, peeking around the corner as I was talking to Laurinaitis. They thought I was crazy, but it's I don't have fear of these people. And maybe that's, I don't know, maybe I have an undersized medulla oblongata or something, but I don't have fear of these people. They put on their pants one leg at a time every day. I have respect for them. But they're people just like me. It's just that God willed that, they be in a position where they have some form of power over me. But hey, I don't work there, so they can't fire me. So I got to give it all I got. So when it came down to it, he came back to me and he actually apologized, John Laurinaitis. And he said, I talked to Steve Kern and he told me you were one of the best guys that we tried out here. I'm anxious to see what you can do. What that led to was the next day I got to go in the ring before the show with Jamie Noble, did some basics. In his own words, it wasn't enough to assess anything. He said, I can't tell what your skill level is because we just did some basic grappling, chain wrestling, ran a spot or two, nothing out of the ordinary. I also happened to pull my groin on one of the spots, which is funny that I'm this indestructible Iron Man, and for whatever reason, I happened to pull my groin in that brief little stuff we were doing. I think it was maybe on a headlock takedown. And I had to kind of just hide that because I'm like, if they see me and I'm kind of hobbling or I'm walking with a bit of a limp, they're going to pull me from the match. I had the match already. So Hawkins and Archer came up to me and they said, are you Jeremy? And I said, yeah, that's me. They're like, okay, we just talked to Pat Patterson. He said, you're really good. So we're going to wrestle you tonight on SmackDown. I said, okay, SmackDown. And at the time, they weren't really doing a lot of enhancement matches on SmackDown. So I said, are we on main event or are we on Smack? 'Cause I knew that they had been getting a bit of a push on main event. So I said, are we on main event or are we on SmackDown? They're like, no, we're on SmackDown. And I was like, oh, okay. It's me. It's a one-on-one or it's a tag match? Like, no, it's a tag match. It'll be against you and this other wrestler just happened to be standing beside me, Tyler Turva. They're like, yeah, against you and him. And I really think they took him, no disrespect to him. He's a very good wrestler. I actually had a chance to work with him again just before the recent lockdowns. But I really think it was just because he was standing beside me. And so we had the match on SmackDown. It was a lot of fun working with both those guys. I'd love to get to work with Brian and Lance again, wherever that may be. But yeah, it was fun. It was a great experience getting to go out there on SmackDown. I remember feeling extremely comfortable. Like, I wasn't nervous. To me, it was like, I belong here. This is what I've wanted my entire life. Went out, saw Vince and Gorilla, went out to the ring. I remember I got in the ring and my partner was a little bit nervous. I mean, I went on the ropes. Like, I didn't care. Like, we're in a dark segment. We're not on TV. I got on the ropes. I looked around. It's like, this is me. I'm comfortable in a wrestling setting. I'm comfortable when the cameras are on. We had the match and it went well. I think it went really well. I think I took some great bumps for them. You can go back and watch it. I think if you watch any of their squash matches, that one was the most memorable for how I took everything. And they were very good with explaining how they wanted their moves to be and positioning and whatnot. But then after that, nothing came of it. And I blame myself for that because I didn't stay on top of them. I didn't continue calling the office. I didn't push the envelope. I didn't find a means of communicating with them. I'm only learning the social media game now because, I realize that without actual wrestling, this is the best way to connect to people. So if I want to go somewhere, like, let's say I want to go to England, which I have been in touch with a few companies like PCW who have yet to write back to me, but I did contact you guys and would love to come in and do some great business with you. With that said, I mean, I learned that social media is such a powerful tool, but in general, just staying in touch with people is such an important part of this, because it's not about what you do or what you can do if nobody knows who you are. So this is what I've dedicated myself to doing, and showing that I am, as cliche as it sounds, the best kept secret, the best unsigned talent. I do consider myself a foremost preeminent talent in Canada. And if anyone wants to dispute that, I mean, my track record speaks for itself. And, find holes in my game, find things that I'm not good at. Not to say I'm good or great at everything, but when push comes to shove, there are people who are only good at maybe one or two things in wrestling. I think if you look at me, I think my appearance, my speaking ability, my in-ring ability, it goes without saying, you just don't see people that can do all of these things. If you can, I haven't met that person yet, and I've faced a lot of people, but I've seen a lot of people with one tool that have gone extremely far. I feel that I have all the tools, but I like to stay away from calling myself a total package or a 5-tool player, because a lot of people that give themselves those monikers are just to cover up their own insecurities. And usually the tool that's missing first and foremost is the actual wrestling. So I don't need to call myself anything like that. People can see it.
Cool. And you mentioned him during that, Sami Zayn, and you've done an interview about him, like some shady things, like him, like basically trying to bury you, I suppose you could say. I've heard you say the story, but for the benefit of people who's watching this, what was your dealings with Sami Zayn and the situation? What happened?
In his own words, he wasn't trying to bury me. He was trying to pick himself up.
That was his words, yeah.
So, Sami Zayn, I don't know. I guess he believes the hype a little bit too much. Because like I said, I can come across as very arrogant, and it's not that I'm arrogant. Or, if you think I'm arrogant, okay, fine, I'm arrogant. But I think that can be leveraged to be very monetizing for a lot of places. Nonetheless, I'm just confident in my own ability. Like I said, I'm confident enough to walk up to John Laurinaitis when people are all scared of him because, I don't know, he's a tall guy with a hoarse voice. And, I believe in me, and I believe in what I bring to the table. I've seen people rise to the top of this business with, like I said, with one tool. So I'm not self-conscious about what I bring to the table and what my potential is. With that said, at that same tryout at the SmackDown, and he was there at Raw too. This is while he was in Ring of Honor, when he was El Generico in Ring of Honor. And, you brought up earlier in the show, I had wrestled him back in 2007, I think it was, when I teamed with Kevin against him and Sexy Eddie. So we've been in the ring, we've wrestled each other. We've been on countless shows together. His hometown is about 25 minutes from mine. He's from Laval, Quebec. And he's a guy that I remember, and he probably doesn't even remember this, but there was even a time where we went to a WWE event. We didn't go together. He may have not even gone to the event, but we'd met up after the event, and we were like outside the hotel, waiting to maybe meet wrestlers or whatever. We had a good talk there. I always thought of him not necessarily as a friend, but like I thought of him as a good person. Yeah. We're there doing this tryout. We never had a crossword amongst us. And in fact, I may have even gone to him for advice. I think I went to him for advice at some points because he was a talented wrestler. And so when we're doing this tryout, at one point, Jamie Noble, because I guess they were familiar with each other from Ring of Honor, asks him and says, we need someone for a dark match against Dos Caras Jr., who would go on to be Alberto Del Rio. Yeah. So he starts, and again, this is a story from quite a few years ago now, about 10 years ago. So what I remember is that I'm standing pretty much the equivalent of where the ring steps are that are closest to the entranceway. They're standing as like pretty much where the mats start, where the ramp ends and the mats start. So I'm extremely close to them. And he recommends a wrestler, Josh Abercrombie. He had done Wrestling Society X at that time. He was building a bit of a name. on the independent scene. I didn't know him from Adam, but Josh Abercrombie, and they shoot that down. They say, well, no, we don't really want him. I think they didn't really like his look per se.
Yeah.
So then even before that, he recommended himself. He's like, well, I could do it. And they said, well, we don't even know what we could call you. You're El Generico. I mean, it's probably copyrighted. And he's like, well, you could call me More Generico. And I can see, okay, I can respect he's trying to get himself the spot. Who wouldn't do that in wrestling? What I don't appreciate is they started then suggesting other people. And I don't remember if I was the next one suggested, but Billy Kidman had liked me from Florida. The reason Billy Kidman and I got off to a great start is because I was a big fan and still am a big fan of Juventud Guerrera. So I had Juice in my email address. They saw that. They probably thought it was a steroid reference. They all kind of got a laugh out of it. Norman Smiley, Kidman, Steve Kern, Tom Pritchard, all of them who were down there. And I said, and especially Kidman, he asked me, he's like, why do you have Juice in your email address? And I said, you'll probably get a kick out of this more than anyone. And I said, it's because I was a big fan of Juventud Guerrera. So that's why I had Juice there. And then that kind of ingratiated me to a lot of the staff at FCW because Norman Smiley was a good friend of Juventud's, Kidman as well. They started calling me Hoovy. Now, I don't think we look that much alike. I think I'm a lot better looking. Obviously, that's subjective. But when it comes down to it, they started calling me Hoovy. And then I started playing that into my matches where I would do the Hoovy driver, the Michinoku driver. And I'd be like, that one was for you guys. I did the 450. I was doing that stuff. But again, that just speaks to I'm comfortable in a ring and doing that. And some people, they tense up under these situations. It's like, for me, there's no such thing as pressure. Pressure makes diamonds, as they say. So, that's pressure is non-existent to me. Bring me the pressure. I've been prepared for this. When you're prepared, you don't got to worry about that kind of stuff. You can be loose. You can have fun. So then Kidman at the tryout at SmackDown, he says, how about Hoovy? He literally says, how about Hoovy? And it's kind of like a who? I was like, oh no, Jeremy over there. And he says, oh, well, I don't really know him. He's kind of from where I'm from, but he's still kind of green. I don't think it should be him. And so normal people would probably, do the polite thing and I'm not looking, but I'm listening. Not me. I lack decorum. I'm there. I'm looking right at him. And I mean, he is maybe 6 feet away from me. I am looking right at him. I'm like, if you're going to be burying me, you're going to bury me to my face with me looking at you, with me knowing, hey, I know where you live. I don't actually know where he lives, but I know the town where he lives. Anyways, with that said, he goes on to say that. And then, I get dismissed for that match. And quite honestly, I didn't care because I already had the SmackDown match, in the bag. So I didn't really care that I would miss out on that, but I still found it very underhanded. So I said, after thinking about it, I'm there in catering. I'm like, I'm not going to stand for this. Like, who's this guy to say this about me? It's again, a case of, you may have more of a name than me in wrestling, but that doesn't, you're not like royalty. You're not part of the monarchy because of that, So I went and I confronted him outside of catering and I said, so why don't you tell me what that was about when you're there burying me to Kidman and Noble? Well, look, man, and he's on the back foot. He's probably never been in a fight in his life. And I mean, if he has, I doubt he was on the winning end of it, but he starts backpedaling and no, hey man, look, I wasn't trying to put you down. I was just trying to, do this for me. I mean, I wanted the match and then, I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's really so much I stand to lose from attacking him, from assaulting him. I have this match here. I'll let bygones be bygones. My whole thing is if someone puts an obstacle in my way, that just makes me work harder. But, I do believe our paths will cross again. And, we'll see how that plays out. I know he's enjoying living in the States and paying less taxes than we do here while bashing the country at the same time. So, who knows if we'll ever cross paths again, but they always say, the same people you see on the way up, you're going to also see on the way down. So, he's had a lot of injuries in his career. I haven't. Who knows how many more years we have in the business, respectively, but I would say that mine are probably a lot more than his since there's less miles and wear and tear on me. And, if he ever decides to come back here, I'd question him about it. I'm not saying I'm going to go and beat him up and hurt him and all those kinds of things that could land me with a lot of legal ramifications. But definitely it's something that I think I would like to talk with him about, and he'll probably just say the same thing that he said before. So, talk is cheap, but when it comes down to it, it's not something I lose a lot of sleep over because, like I said, we will cross paths eventually, and maybe we'll be able to do a follow-up here on your show. But I don't think very highly of him, and that's my assessment of him from that. And if that loses me fans, that loses me followers. Oh well, I don't mind a million people not liking me if 10 billion do.
To be fair, Jeremy, it's been documented that he's hard to work with, and even we mentioned earlier Kevin Owens. Obviously, him and Sammy's best friends, I suppose. But even Kevin said himself, he said he's hard to be around. So what you're saying, I don't think anyone's going to doubt because. Even because people say to you, like, when you watch him on TV and, like, his current persona now, he's this irritating person. I'm thinking, to me, that feels like that's pretty real to what the person actually is.
I don't know him that well. I don't know. It's maybe it's not really even something that bugs me that much. Like I said, if you didn't bring it up, it's not something I would think about. I just think it speaks volumes to people who are willing to stab people in the back. And more fallout of that is directly from Kevin. When I had that altercation with him, he said, I know you and Rami had that issue. And, he told me that he wasn't going to recommend you because, he says that it'd be too outlandish. You have too much of an ego. You have too much, I've never put a knife in anybody's back. It's one thing I'm very proud of because in my head, I've always said, I don't care if somebody else is in the main event. I don't care if somebody else is a champion. I don't care if somebody else gets hired to a big company. Power to them. All that means is, hey, I got to look at myself and say, I need to be working harder. That's my way of dealing with these things. Unfortunately, we're in a subjective business where it's not always what you do, it's who you know. And that's what it comes down to. That's why these guys have, been able to climb that ladder because maybe they were more willing. And I say these guys, I shouldn't drag Kevin into this, but someone like Rami who, he put the knife in my back. I don't doubt that more people who probably trust him, they've given their backs to him, and he's done the same thing. So I don't think very highly of him. And a lot of times karma has ways of putting these imbalances in the world in check. So I'll leave it in their hands. But if he and I do cross paths, I'll be sure to give you an update on how that went.
Cool. And this is a little bit off base, but one of the good matches you had on the Indies was with Davey Boy Smith Jr., Harry Smith, who's a great guy, and obviously he's part connected with the legendary Hart family, and obviously Montreal Screwjob. So even though this is a little bit off on a tangent, I suppose, you being from Quebec, how did you feel? Like I guess you was pretty young as well, but Montreal Screwjob, like obviously, like over here in the UK, we love Brett and the Hart family because of Davey. So over in Canada, like when that actually happened, like from what you remember, what was like the country or the city itself like when that happened?
Well, I was actually there the night that it happened, the screw job.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I was in attendance when it happened, and man, it was for me. It was a great show that I was looking forward to because we had not had television in Montreal from the WWF ever. I think that was the first televised event that they did here. Definitely the first one at the Bell Center. Not only that, but Shawn versus Brett, the Iron Man match, was one of my favorite matches of all time. And to get to finally see the revenge match, the rematch, that was, and to see it live, it was better than anything I could have ever dreamed. Little did I know that night would live on in infamy forever. I was as big of a Bret Hart fan as there was. I absolutely hated Shawn Michaels. Years later, I would meet him a couple of times, and the whole born again Christian thing, reformed. I'd like to believe that he's not the same individual that he was at the time of the screw job. I like to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think everyone deserves that. All that to say, the way it played out, it left a huge impact on me, and I think it left a huge impact on a lot of us here in Quebec. I think it made a lot of us decide, we want to be in the wrestling business. And I mean, I attended a lot of WWE events. I attended a lot of pay-per-view events in Canada, in the United States, met a ton of people there. Only got to meet Brett for the first time. And obviously I wouldn't want to bring up the screw job with him, but I got to meet Brett when I did that tryout in 2010, I think it was. Yeah. Met Brett, got to tell him he was my inspiration. The only time I ever really got to see him wrestle live was, in fact, the Screw Job. And then I was on the same show with him when he beat The Miz for the United States Championship. I was there trying out. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, no, it just, I think that as much as it started an Attitude Era all over the world, I don't believe the Attitude Era ever died here in Montreal. And that's why we have such raucous audiences. That's why, they'll still chant, "You screwed Brett." They'll still chant all the things that, were common back then. It's a hostile audience because it just scarred us for life. There was a show they were organizing to try to chant "You screwed Brett" throughout the entire event. There were people. I used to go early. I used to, get there maybe 7, 8 in the morning. So I wanted to, hopefully meet some wrestlers at the time. And it was almost militant. I witnessed a guy, a crazed fan, jump on the McMahon's limo. So it was Vince, Triple H, Stephanie. I think it was just those three traveling together. And their limo arrived, and there was a bit of a delay because they have a garage that they have to go in. And security was a little lax. There was maybe only 2 security guards. And this one guy was just shouting obscenities at Vince. "You screwed Brett. You killed WCW. You killed the wrestling business." All kinds of things. And jumped on the hood of the limo and started banging on the window. They pulled him off. And then even when they got him off, the limo went in and the garage door was still open. He was still shouting obscenities as he was being pulled away by security. I think he might have got arrested. But that just speaks to the Montreal wrestling fan. Another thing people don't know here, even people in WWE don't realize this, is that the televised coverage of the WWF was not that good here for a long time. So we used to have Monday Night Raw on TSN. It's our sports network. It's the ESPN equivalent in Canada. Or I guess maybe for you guys, it's like BT Sport. I think is that the big sports brand out there now?
BT Sport and Sky Sports, but BT Sport,
Sky Sports.
On,
BT now has WWE. Yeah, exactly. So TSN had Monday Night Raw, but then at some point when they made the jump to, it was when Monday Night Football, they picked up Monday Night Football on TSN. So Raw was no longer being shown here unless you had a specialty package where you could get Raw. I think at the time it might have been on Spike TV. I might be getting my timeline wrong, but all that to say, it left the basic cable package here in Montreal specifically. So I think a lot of people stopped watching wrestling here because of that. But they would still go to the live events. So now imagine going to the events and you don't have the continuity of everything that's going on. This is what the WWE never figured out. I figured it out because I have a black belt in common sense. But they never figured out, why is it that we push the storyline of, let's say, Chris Jericho as a heel, and then he gets this big pop in Montreal. Even other people like Kevin Nash, who was like kind of irrelevant. He did a match with Test here on an episode of Raw. Huge pop for Kevin Nash when he wasn't really overly over as a babyface. Triple H, one of the biggest heels in the game, in the midst of his reign of terror. Huge pops in Montreal because they still remember the nostalgia of the Attitude Era, and they're not following the current product. We had a horrendous pay-per-view here called Breaking Point. It drew empty seats all over the place. I would be embarrassed if I was putting on that show for how piss poor the attendance was. And it was simply because people weren't watching the show. It was so hard to get access to it. Only the absolute diehard of diehard fans who are willing to shell out the extra $60 to $70 a month, like us who are in the business and want to watch wrestling, would know what's going on. And that's why, lukewarm reactions to certain people, maybe someone might come out and perform well and get a good reaction, but the audience was very hostile because they weren't following the product. Now, I guess the fact that we have Canadians, we have Quebecers there, we have Kevin and Rami, maybe there are more people that are watching. We have a deal on French TV. They have a deal on French TV. So there are some people who can familiarize themselves, but for the longest time, it was extremely hard to follow the product. And so people were just going there with it already in their minds that, hey, we're still in the Attitude Era. This is still going on. They sold out the Bell Center when Brett finally appeared there for the first time, because I think more people at the time would want to see Brett than would want to see John Cena. That's right. They just, I guess they didn't have someone like me there that could read the climate and could, solve the Rubik's Cube of why is Montreal this bizarro land? As they coined the term bizarro land.
That's right. One of my favorite moments, and it kind of ties in with what you say, because I would imagine, because so many Montreal Quebecs didn't watch Raw and SmackDown, the only reason they popped for this particular match was for this reason. So you mentioned him earlier, Sylvain Grandray,
Yes.
and he was tagging with Rob Conway's La Resistance,
Yep.
and they was facing Edge and Chris Benoit. I think I've got that right for the tag team titles.
Yep.
So La Resistance, the heels, they was the biggest baby faces, and I posted the video on my Instagram, and Sylvain actually liked it. And when they got the 1-2-3, I've never seen a louder reaction in my life when they won it. It was like mad. I would love to go to a Montreal Quebec show one day if ever I'm given the opportunity, because I just want to be around the fans, because they kind of remind me of the UK fans, because we don't get WWE over here a lot. When WWE does come over here, we make ourselves known, especially if like some UK guys or from Ireland goes to a WrestleMania. We make the difference. And yeah, so I've always loved the Canadian fans whenever like WWE does a show in Canada, especially Montreal or Toronto, I suppose, as well. It's great stuff. But
one I would always point to also was the Sylvain Grenier versus Tatanka match that took place when he was doing the Ambassador of Quebec. That's literally right. One of the loudest reactions I've ever heard. The other top reactions I'd say are probably Hulk Hogan. He got a long sustained ovation at one point. Which speaks to the nostalgia and how, you know, these fans, they're not following the product week after week. So someone like a John Cena, Roman Reigns wouldn't connect as much with the audience as someone who maybe was a big deal back in the Attitude Era. We had like on a Sunday Night Heat taping, Val Venus came out for a match. Huge pop for Val Venus. Like that's, I think, one of the special things about Montreal and even our independent scene. You know, we have a certain attitude. We have a certain level of you know, that adult content you saw in the Attitude Era. A company like IWS that I wrestle for, currently tag team champions, you know, was hailed as potentially being the new ECW because they always had that extreme edge, that Attitude Era. It influenced a lot of us that happened to Brett. I mean, you can definitely see it in my career and the stuff I've done, but, you know, I'm not to say I'm the runt of the litter here, but, you know, we got a lot of talented people and they're all impacted on that. We all got chips on their shoulders. I just happen to have the biggest one.
Yeah, cool. And getting back to your career, you became the Great North champion for the first Great North Wrestling champion for the first time, defeating Lanny Poffo, who we mentioned earlier, and you held the title now 3 times, and you're the current champ. So, how does it feel being like basically the leader of this particular company and being a champion?
I mean, it's a great responsibility. Being a champion means that, you know, they've entrusted you with being on top of the marquee, being able to fill the seats. You know, a packed house has a lot of fathers. An empty house has, you know, it's an orphan pretty much. So not to take all the credit, I think Great North Wrestling does a good job of balancing top level, big name talent along with current talent, hell of a women's division as well. And there's going to be more of a focus on that from what Hannibal, Devin Nicholson has told me for years to come. And I've kind of been a staple of Great North Wrestling. And I think that more than anything, this championship represents the fact that I'm reliable, that no matter who they put me in the ring with, and they've put me in the ring with exceptional talents, you know, the Scott Steiners, Wes Briscoe, Lanny Poffo, guys who've made, you know, more than a dime in this business. And they've put me in with, you know, local city councilors and local car salesmen and police officers, and they know that, you know, you can put me in with any scrub and it'll still be something that'll be entertaining for the fans. But, you know, they've also threw me a few bones and given me opponents that I can make sure that they get a great performance out of them, keep them safe, keep them happy. So I think it's more about reliability. If I had to say why this title usually finds its way to me, you know, I never miss a show. I never turned down a fight, which is something I'm very proud of. I think that in wrestling, that's the way it should be, that, you know, you don't politic and pick and choose. You do what they tell you, and you should be able to get the most out of anybody. And, you know, I don't duck anybody. And if there's anyone watching this and, you know, that tickles your pickle and you want to fight with me, I welcome it, because I don't say no to anybody.
Awesome. So we're nearly at the end. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, I've been messaged a few times. So you've been on the road for 15 years, so you've told us some great stories. So someone asked me, what was the funniest rib you've seen?
Funniest rib. Let me think here. Funniest rib. I mean, I'm not a big ribber myself. I don't like to, not to say I don't like to rib people. I enjoy a good rib, but it's not really my thing. It's not my forte. I've seen some ribs that have gotten out of hand. And I'm sure like I'm going to tell you a story and it probably won't be the best one because it'll probably just be the first one that comes to mind. There was one time, and we got blamed for this. I was with Drew Onyx, and we had just finished a show for TOW for Sylvain Grenier's promotion. And I just remember there was another wrestler, Frankie the Mobster, which if you know Frankie the Mobster, he's a big, muscular, tattooed individual. He's also Frankie the Beast King. He's a monster of a human being. And he was in a shower. There was a one-stall shower with it was just like a cubicle, like a shower with an overhead that was clear. And Sexy Eddie and another wrestler, Handsome JF, they went and they found like garbage can. They dumped it in the shower while Frankie was in there. He starts losing his mind. He comes out. He sees me and Drew Onyx sitting there getting changed. He initially thinks that it's us, and then it's like, you really would think it was us? You know, we don't have a reputation for doing these kinds of things. And he's like, well, who was it? And I said, well, you know, it was Eddie and the other guy. And he's like, okay, fine. And then he took protein. He mixed it in a shaker. He took Eddie's boots. He removed the sole, poured the protein in the boot, put the sole back, and Eddie's boots. Eddie's very proud of his boots. They're nice gold, custom-made, black and gold custom-made boots. And he had them in a bag at the bottom of his bag. And he did that. He put it in there. And then I remember forgetting about it. And then I think I'd spoken to Eddie again a month ago, and he's like, you know, I didn't have shows for like 3-4 weeks. All of a sudden, there's this smell coming from my bag, and then I look, my boots are full of this gooey substance, and so so I guess he drove the point home when he poured the protein into his boots. And I'm sure Eddie's been on the end of many a ribs. I mean, I've had ribs played on me, but again, it's been nothing out of line. You know, I'm very against like hazing and those kinds of things. It's like, you know, we're here to wrestle. We're here to have a good time. But I mean, I'm not I'm here to do business. I'm not a guy who, you know, even likes to go out and party and all that stuff after shows. I'm about what we do in the ring and making sure I do the best performance to help propel me further in the business. I'm very businesslike. So I wish I had a better rib story. I'm sure that I do. But for now,
when we do a part 2, we'll get the other one.
Yeah, for now, I'll leave it at that one of Sexy Eddie's boots being defiled.
Cool. So we're down to the last segment. So I mentioned it earlier. It's called That 90s Wrestling Podcast. So I'm going to ask you some 90s-based personality questions, I suppose, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
So to kick things off, your favorite 90s movie?
Favorite movie in the 90s, I would say, was The Mighty Ducks. Especially because I played hockey, so love the Mighty Ducks trilogy. That would definitely be my favorite 90s movie.
Awesome. I've just recently, when they brought out the Disney app, I just recently rewatched trilogy, and all I kept thinking was flashbacks to my childhood, just being obsessed with these movies. So it's great. Your favorite 90s TV show?
I know that I watched a lot of The Simpsons in the 90s. Yep. Don't watch it as much now, but I'd say The Simpsons, and close second would be Seinfeld.
Yeah, I've never got around to watching Seinfeld, believe it or not. It's something that's never been. I've heard of it, and I heard it was this big, massive, popular show like all across America and that. But I've never actually watched it myself, so it's something I have to get into.
Well, you could also skip to the big leagues and maybe watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, which to me is like a much better version of Seinfeld.
I've heard of that. I'll definitely get around to it. And I don't know if you was much of a video game player growing up, but what was your favorite video game?
Oh, absolutely. Final Fantasy, without a doubt. Specifically Final Fantasy IV, which was known as Final Fantasy II here for us in North America. Big fan of that. When they made Final Fantasy IV, the After Years, that was like a dream come true that they actually made a sequel to that game. That's an easy question for me to answer. The hours that I spent playing that, I've played through it at least 4 times. So yeah, by far my favorite video game.
Awesome. And we'll bring it back to the wrestling, and I think I've got an idea who you're going to pick, but who is your favorite 90s wrestler?
I think that's an easy one. That would be Bret Hart. Close second for Chris Jericho, but you know, Bret Hart. Like I like to tell people, you know, when you see Jeremy Prophet, you'll see like a kind of like a mix of Bret Hart, Chris Jericho, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Tupac, you know, if he wasn't a rapist. But that's pretty much what you get when you see Jeremy Prophet.
Cool. And you've been a tag team champion yourself, so your favorite 90s tag team?
It might sound like I'm brown nosing a bit here, but I love the Quebecers.
Yeah.
I again, I like that they were from here, but they were entertaining and they did a lot of good stuff. I mean, when it came to the double teams that they did, literally every tag was a double team, and that's something that I've tried to emulate in my tag team matches. That you're tagging for a reason, and you're taking advantage of the 5-second window to go in there and be two guys doing the damage. And I think that's something they brought into wrestling. They don't get enough credit for it. And it's one of the fun things about getting to work with someone like PCO through his PCO Justice series. That's right, in between filming the actual scenes, getting to pick his brain on a lot of things in wrestling. The man has had so many years in the business. Only got to work with him in the ring a handful of times, but the amount of knowledge that I've gathered from him outside of the ring. We talk on the phone, every week, and it's always just being under the learning tree and learning from someone who's been there and done that. And hopefully he and I can at some point be able to do battle on a bigger stage, which spoiler alert, we are eventually going to fight in the cinematic world on PCO Justice. The episodes haven't quite got there yet, but it's going to happen. It's already been filmed, and I think it's going to be quite a treat for everyone who's been following the series.
Awesome. I've just recently interviewed him about 2 weeks ago. And I think at the time of recording this, this interview will be getting released probably next week. But great guy, great story. So I'm looking forward to releasing that. And the final 90s question, the favorite 90s match?
I think I spoiled that a little earlier when I said the Iron Man match between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. We talked about it on an episode of Jofo here, where we discussed our favorite matches for the old Winged Eagle championship, and I really think that was the pinnacle of that title, of two people being able to fight for an hour, and not an hour of chin locks and arm locks and the kind of wrestling that will make the audience just kind of say, okay, these guys are treading water just to safely get through that. No, they went at it. They went, full throttle, balls to the walls. And I've been in a few Iron Man matches myself, so I know just how grueling that can be. I can go for an hour, but you definitely need a dance partner who's up to par. And when you can get someone that can push you, like when me and Mike Bailey wrestle, and we're pushing each other, and it's I want to make sure he gets tired first. He's trying to make sure I get tired first, and the harder you hit me, the harder I'm hitting you back. When you get a good dance partner, it's magic. It's like poetry. And it's art. It's the art of wrestling in its purest form. It's we call it objective wrestling, and that was an hour of a great story, great action, no shortcuts. I really think that match, for me, that's the greatest match I've ever seen.
Awesome. It's also the best looking WWE title of all time as well.
I agree. Yep.
Awesome.
Now I know it sounds like you're wrapping up, but I'd wanted to ask you, since you're fastly becoming a very powerful man here in the wrestling industry. I know you have some connections to certain companies and whatnot. So I was wondering if maybe I could take this time to, if it hasn't already, come across in this very nice infomercial that you've given me here, just to, talk about what has been my crusade over the last little while. Anytime I've been in an interview, is talking about this right here, about Canada and about our great talents that we have here, that I really feel a lot of the major companies are missing the boat on. And I think for, maybe not a company like the WWE that's on top for now and may be there for a while, but a lot of other major companies around the world, we have a vast, untapped, unlimited resource of amazing talent who simply aren't getting the same breaks that a lot of our brothers to the South are. We have a lot of great people here. I know a lot of people listen to your show, and, if I could speak directly to them, I just want to say, you guys should be looking to Canada. We have a lot of guys here who've come and gone that really should have been in better places. And why I started this is because I don't want to be one of those people. So I'm going to use all my resources to reach out to you. But like I said, I'm the runt of the litter. If I don't float your boat, that's fine. But there are a lot of other people who deserve to be in better places. And unfortunately, we can't legally go wrestle in the United States, so we can't perform on those stages. So we kind of need someone who's going to be a benefactor, who's going to say, hey, this person here, Jeremy Prophet, maybe there's something to him. We can't realistically bring him in to try him out, but it might be worth investing in. This has been my crusade. This has been my struggle. I've even taken it as far as actually, I've written a letter to Bret the Hitman Hart to see if he would want to come on board with this. I thankfully had a connection that was able to put me in contact with him. But, I'm going to keep knocking on every door. And I know we have a lot of executives out there, EVPs, whatever they may be called. Some of them are your close personal friends. But, if these words can reach them, then all the better. Think of the Canadian people fighting that same fight, that same struggle that you guys had to go through generations past. Let's get the doors open. In the UK, you guys have NXT UK. I'm not saying there should be an NXT UK Canada. That kind of got misconstrued. I don't think we need that because we're just as good as the Americans. And we have people that could be main event talents here working hard, grinding day after day after day who aren't getting the opportunity. I'm not saying give us a handout. I'm saying give us an opportunity, whether that's the opportunity to succeed and make you a ton of money, or it's the opportunity to fail. We just have too many of us that can't get through the border, that can't go to the big name indies legally without the scrutiny of the government. And we're here doing great matches in this purgatory known as Canada, when we realistically could be helping you guys out on a bigger stage. So, whether it's, put up or shut up, or just saying, hey, you know what, maybe there's something right there. Take a look at the Canadian independent scene. Look how the UK scene with you guys blew up. And I know because I've been in the ring with Pete Dunne and, right. Did some tremendous work with him. He's such a great talent. And, he explained how, everything you guys had to go through, even with, before NXT UK, when you had the UK title tournament and all of that. And, I think the same thing could happen here in Canada. We just need people to look at us. We need companies like, the AEWs, the Ring of Honors, the MLWs, the Impact. Impact has Canadians in positions of power. So, guys, I'm not a hard guy to find, but again, I'm the runt of the litter. There are tons of talented people here just wasting away. And I think that those guys, all of us, deserve better. So hopefully we can get the word out there and you guys can take notice, from one hungry lion representing the entire pack. I think that a lot can be done to get us to better places during this 2020, so that 2021 Canada becomes a force to be reckoned with in the market of professional wrestling.
I'm hoping it'll happen. I've mentioned, when we've done other shows and quizzes and things like that, and private conversations, like I've always felt the connection between the UK and Canada, and I've always been a fan of Canadian wrestling as well. So I'm hoping to see it happen myself because, growing up and being Bret also being my favorite of all time, I've always had a soft spot for Canadian wrestlers, and I've had the pleasure of interviewing Eric Young and that as well, and him telling me him growing up in a little village or town of 200 people, and the journey he had to go on to get to where he is. So I understand completely where you're coming from, but hopefully it'll come off. But before we do sign off, where can everyone find you on social media?
Easiest place to find me is on Twitter at Jeremy Prophet. It's JeremyProphet. As I always like to say, don't spell it like the Street Profits because that will upset me. I've also existed longer than they have. And you can also find me on Instagram at The Real Jeremy Prophet. You can hear me on Jofo in the Ring almost every week. But, I want to do as many episodes as possible because, like I said, I got a message, I got a crusade, and I'm going to see it through to the bitter or sweet end. Regardless of how that goes. And, hopefully this will be able to catapult me to places like the UK where I would love to work. I mean, if you guys only listen to one part of the interview, listen to the part where I put over your wonderful Commonwealth out there, from Ireland to Scotland, where, my ancestors actually on my father's side, my father's mother's side are from Scotland. The family name is Scott. They were some of the first settlers to come here to Canada. Would love to go work in the UK or anywhere in Europe or in Asia. But considering I'm talking to an Englishman here, I would love to go out there and work. So, PCW, return my messages. I'm giving you guys a shout out here on this amazing platform. And there's also another company by the name of Super Clash out there run by a gentleman named Matt Jarrett, who had some plans to bring me in. Unfortunately, those got squashed. So maybe if one of those two comes through, you and I can actually meet up. Maybe we can even host something there in person and talk about the 90s. That'd be a lot of fun too.
Be awesome. Cool. Well, Jeremy, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Like I said, I remember seeing clips of you many moons ago, and the fact now a few years later, I've had the pleasure of actually interviewing you, listening to your story, and
what I like
great
to always
stories
say
you've
is,
told.
the clips that you saw, that was back when I was young and good looking. Now I'm just good looking. Don't let the sunglasses fool you. I'm proud of the way I look.
Cool. So, like I said again, thank you very much for coming on, and hopefully we can do this again.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, James.
Cool. Thank you.